I never thought it would happen to me. Heart attacks were something that happened to other people, people who were obviously unhealthy, people who never exercised, people who looked like they were at risk. Not me. Not Bob Miller, the guy who still played tennis twice a week at 60, the guy who could keep up with his grandkids at the park. I wasn't overweight, I didn't smoke. I thought I was doing everything right. But there I was on an ordinary Tuesday morning, feeling a strange pressure in my chest while loading the dishwasher. Probably just indigestion, I told myself. That decision to ignore what my body was telling me. That almost cost me everything. It started like any other day. I woke up around 6:30, had my usual coffee and toast, and was getting ready to head out for my morning walk. My wife Jane had already left for her book club meeting. I remember feeling a bit more tired than usual, but I chalked it up to not sleeping well the night before. Nothing to worry about. While cleaning up the kitchen, I felt this. Pressure. Not exactly pain, just an uncomfortable sensation across my chest. Like someone was sitting on me. I stood there for a moment, dishwasher half loaded, wondering if I should be concerned. Then I felt a twinge in my left arm. Huh, that's weird, I thought. But you know what I did. I kept loading the dishwasher. Can you believe that? Looking back now, I want to shake myself. The signs were there, classic heart attack warning signs, and I just ignored them. About 20 minutes later, I started feeling sweaty. Not the good kind of sweat after exercise, this was different. Cold sweat, and I felt slightly nauseous. That's when I finally sat down, and thankfully, I had the sense to call my neighbor Tom. Something's not right, I told him. Could you come over? Those 5 words might have saved my life. You know what's interesting about denial? It's incredibly powerful. Even as Tom was driving me to the emergency room, I refused to let him call an ambulance. Another mistake. I was telling him, it's probably nothing. Maybe it's just anxiety or something I ate. The doctors later told me this is incredibly common, especially for men my age. We don't want to appear weak or worried over nothing. We don't want to be a burden. And honestly, we don't want to face our own mortality. When we arrived at the ER and I described my symptoms, everything changed. The casual "let's wait and see" attitude vanished. Suddenly, I was surrounded by medical staff, being hooked up to machines, having blood drawn. Mr. Miller, the doctor said, looking at me with serious eyes, "You're having a heart attack." Those 4 words changed everything. In that moment, I wasn't invincible anymore. I wasn't the exception to the rule. I was a statistic, one of the nearly 805,000 Americans who have a heart attack each year. And I nearly became one of the 605,000 who have their first heart attack and never get to have a second chance. Here's what I didn't understand before my heart attack: they don't always happen the way they do in movies. You know, the dramatic clutching of the chest, falling to the ground. For many people, especially older adults, the symptoms can be subtle, easy to dismiss. The cardiologist who saved my life, Dr. Patel, sat with me during my recovery and explained what had happened. A plaque buildup in one of my coronary arteries had ruptured, forming a clot that blocked blood flow to part of my heart. Despite my tennis games and relatively healthy diet, I had been at risk without knowing it. "Bob," she said, "your cholesterol levels were high, your blood pressure was borderline, and there's your family history to consider." That's right, my father had had a heart attack at 65, and his father died of one at 62. Somehow, I had minimized this crucial piece of information in my mind. Dr. Patel explained that for seniors like me, heart health requires more than just occasional exercise and avoiding obviously unhealthy foods. It requires vigilance, regular checkups, understanding our numbers, and most importantly, listening to our bodies. Looking back, there were warning signs I had been ignoring for months, That shortness of breath when climbing the stairs to our bedroom. I blamed it on agings. The occasional discomfort in my chest after a particularly competitive tennis match. Just pushing myself too hard, I thought. The fatigue that seemed to be increasing week by week. Well, everyone gets tired at 60, right? Wrong. These were all potential warning signs that something wasn't right with my heart. And I dismissed every single one of them. Doctor Patel told me this is particularly common among seniors. We attribute everything to just getting older, instead of recognizing that some changes might be warning us about something more serious. The classic warning signs of a heart attack that everyone should know include chest discomfort or pain that feels like pressure, squeezing, fullness, or pain discomfort in other areas of the upper body, like one or both arms, the back, neck, jaw, or stomach, shortness of breath, cold sweats, nausea, lightheadedness. But here's the thing, for seniors, especially women, the signs can be different or more subtle. Extreme fatigue, shortness of breath without chest discomfort, or pain in the lower chest or upper abdomen can all be signs of a heart attack in older adults. After my heart attack, I had to have a stent placed in my artery to keep it open. The procedure itself wasn't as scary as I'd imagined, but the recovery. That was a journey I wasn't prepared for. Physically, I felt weak in a way I'd never experienced before. Walking to the mailbox left me winded. My medications made me feel different, sometimes dizzy, sometimes just not quite myself. But the physical challenges were nothing compared to the emotional ones. What? I was afraid. For the first time in my adult life, I was truly afraid. Every twinge, every slight discomfort in my chest sent me into a panic. Is it happening again? Am I having another heart attack? I'd wonder. I'd wake up in the middle of the night just to check if I was still breathing normally. Jane, my wife of 38 years, was my rock. Through all of this, she tracked my medications, drove me to appointments, and most importantly, she listened to my fears without minimizing them. But I could see the worry in her eyes too. My heart attack hadn't just happened to me, it had happened to us. One of the most difficult parts of recovery was accepting that I needed to make significant changes to my lifestyle. It wasn't just about taking medications, it was about transforming how I lived day to day. The cardiac rehabilitation program was a game changer for me. 3 times a week, I'd go to the hospital for monitored exercise sessions, educational classes, and support. At first, I was resistant. I thought I knew enough about health to manage on my own. Boy, was I wrong. I learned that my idea of a healthy diet had plenty of room for improvement. I was eating too much sodium, not enough fruits and vegetables, and portions that were way too large. The nutritionist helped me understand how to truly eat for heart health, not just for weight management. Exercise was another eye-opener. I thought my tennis games twice a week were enough. They weren't. I needed regular, moderate-intensity exercise most days of the week. And I needed to include strength training, which I'd always avoided because, well, I just didn't like it. Stress management was perhaps the biggest surprise in my recovery plan. Dr. Patel explained that chronic stress can significantly impact heart health, especially for seniors. I'd always prided myself on handling stress well by ignoring it. Turns out that's not handling it at all. I learned meditation techniques, deep breathing exercises, and most importantly, how to recognize when I was feeling stressed. Jane and I also started taking evening walks together, just talking and unwinding from the day. Those walks have become one of the best parts of my new routine. The medications were an adjustment too. I'm now on several: a statin for cholesterol, a blood pressure medication, a blood thinner, and a beta blocker. At first, I resented having to take pills every day. It felt like admitting defeat somehow. But Dr. Patel helped me reframe my thinking. These medications aren't a crutch, Bob, she told me. They're tools that, along with your lifestyle changes, give you the best chance at a long, healthy life. Would you refuse to use a hammer when building a house? Something that doesn't get talked about enough is the emotional impact of a heart attack, especially for seniors. Depression is common after a cardiac event. I experienced it myself. There were days when I couldn't see the point in all these changes. Days when I thought, well, if my heart's going to give out anyway, what's the point? Those dark thoughts scared me. They scared Jane too. Fortunately, my cardiac rehab program included a mental health component, and the counselor helped me understand that these feelings were normal. She helped me develop strategies to cope with them and recognize when I needed additional support. One of the most helpful things was connecting with other heart attack survivors through a support group. Hearing their stories, sharing my fears, and learning how they'd moved forward gave me hope. It also gave me perspective. There was a man in my group, Jim, who'd had his heart attack at 55, 5 years younger than me. He told us how he'd ignored his symptoms for over 24 hours because he was in the middle of an important work project. By the time he got to the hospital, the damage to his heart was severe. He now lives with heart failure and significant limitations. Jim's story hit me hard. I realized how fortunate I was that my neighbor had insisted on taking me to the ER when he did. The doctors had told me that the quick response had minimized the damage to my heart muscle. In cardiac events, time is muscle, every minute counts. It's been 2 years since my heart attack, and I've had a lot of time to reflect on what I wish I'd known before it happened. If I could go back and give my pre-heart attack self some advice, here's what I'd say. First, know your numbers. Not just your weight or how many minutes you can play tennis. Know your blood pressure, cholesterol levels, blood sugar, and what they mean for your heart health. I had a physical every year, but I never really paid attention to these numbers. I just assumed if the doctor didn't make a big deal about them, they must be fine. Second, understand your family history and take it seriously. Heart disease runs in families, and my father's heart attack should have been a red flag for me to be extra vigilant. Third, recognize that staying active is different from structured exercise for heart health. My tennis games were great, but they weren't enough. I needed regular cardiovascular exercise, strength training, and flexibility work. Fourth, what you eat matters more as you age. My metabolism had slowed down, but my eating habits hadn't changed much since my 40s. The cardiac-friendly diet I follow now is actually more satisfying than how I used to eat, and I wish I'd made these changes sooner. Fifth, stress and sleep affect your heart more than you might think. I was getting by on 6 hours of sleep most nights and wearing my stress like a badge of honor. Both were putting extra strain on my heart. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, listen to your body. Those little warnings I dismissed. They were my body trying to tell me something was wrong. If I'd paid attention sooner, perhaps I could have addressed the issues before they culminated in a heart attack. People often ask me if I'm afraid of having another heart attack. The honest answer is yes, sometimes I am. But that fear doesn't control my life anymore. Instead, it motivates me to stay committed to my heart-healthy lifestyle. My life today looks different than it did before my heart attack, but in many ways it's better. Jane and I are closer than ever. We cook heart-healthy meals together, we exercise together, and we talk more openly about our health concerns and fears. I still play tennis, though I've switched from competitive singles to more social doubles matches. I walk every day, do strength training twice a week with a trainer who specializes in senior fitness, and I've even started taking a gentle yoga class that's surprisingly challenging. My diet has completely transformed. We've cut back significantly on red meat, increased our consumption of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and we're mindful of sodium and added sugars. I've discovered that food actually tastes better when you're not overwhelming your taste buds with salt and sugar. Perhaps the biggest change is in my mindset. I don't take my health or my life for granted anymore. Each day feels like a gift, an opportunity to make choices that support my heart health and overall well-being. And I've become something of an advocate among my friends and family. When my tennis buddy mentioned having occasional chest pain after playing, I practically drove him to the doctor myself. Turns out he had significant blockage in 2 arteries and needed stents, just like I did. His cardiologist told him he'd avoided a major heart attack by coming in when he did. That's why I'm sharing my story today. Because if just one person recognizes the warning signs and gets help sooner rather than later, then my experience will have served a greater purpose. So here's what I want you to take away from my story: heart attacks don't just happen to other people. They can happen to anyone, even those of us who think we're doing everything right. Know the warning signs, especially the ones that might be more common in seniors, and don't ignore them or write them off as just getting older. Understand your personal risk factors, family history, cholesterol levels, blood pressure, and lifestyle habits, and take steps to address them before they lead to a crisis. If you do experience symptoms that could indicate a heart problem, don't wait. Don't drive yourself to the hospital. Call 911s. Those emergency responders can start treatment the moment they reach you, and that quick response could save your heart muscle and your life. And if you've already had a heart attack like me, know that life doesn't end with that diagnosis. In many ways, it can be the beginning of a healthier, more mindful way of living. I'm Bob Millers. I'm 62 years old. I'm a heart attack survivor. And I'm healthier today than I was before my heart decided to give me a wake-up call. Thank you for listening to my story. Take care of your heart, it's the only one you've got.